Hello and welcome back to the 5 Minute Warning with myself, Matt Sheahan from PlanetSail, and my colleague out in the sunshine,
Andy Rice from Sailjuice. Hello, Matt. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. I'm good, thanhanks. I'm still inside and you're outside again. There's a pattern emerging here. I'm not sure. Not sure I like this, but anyway, we'll go with it for the time being. Just before we get on to where you are, quick for anybody who's just joined us for the first time. Andy and I have covered all kinds of events. We're very lucky all over the world for a long time, and we were thinking the other day that actually this season looks to be very, very busy indeed, with some real crowd pullers going on, not least of all the America's Cup, the Vendée Globe, the Olympics. So we thought, why not have a regular, quick 5 minute update? Just see if it's possible to have a 5 minute update between the two of us. We've failed on every occasion so far, but we haven't let that stop us from trying to achieve that as the goal. But anyway, that's what we're planning to do. So there you have it. I'm in Hamble, and Andy, let's kick off with you. Whereabouts are you?
I'm in the south of France, and you might remember when there was water dripping into my ears, and I was absolutely deluged a couple of weeks ago. Well, that was in Hyères as well. But the south of France back then was like being in England. There was no difference. Finally, summer has arrived in the south of France, and I'm back here for the Formula Kite World Championships. So this is the last major event for this debut foiling event that we've never seen in the Olympics. And some might argue, is this sailing? We could have that debate. We can't get that in 5 minutes, but this will be the fastest of any of the Olympic sports in the Summer Olympics. You can't match the Winter Olympics for downhill skiing and so forth, but doing up to close to 80 kilometers an hour, close to 50 miles an hour, or 45 knots or whatever, the speeds of these things, considering it is just a man or a woman on a 1.5 meter carbon board hovering half a meter above the surface of the water. And even in 4 or 5 knots of wind, once they've built the apparent, they can be doing well in excess of 30 knots. So bang for buck in terms of the efficiency of these craft. They're probably the most efficient wind-powered sailing craft in existence.
That's amazing. That's an awful lot of cheese wire going upwind, isn't it? I mean, how big are the fleets?
So we've got about 80 men at this event, and we got about 45 women, and the women get divided into 2 fleets. The men into 3 fleets, and then it will break into Gold Fleet, 25 board fleets for the final 2 days, and then 10 boards, 10 riders on the final. And the final is set up on the last day in such a way that any of the top 10 could still win the competition overall. It's just the further down you are the order, the higher the mountain you've got to climb. But that's another thing, is that whoever wins the last race in the boards is winner of the championship, which on TV looks really, really neat, because there's no confusion about someone finishing 10th and last in a medal race, or having even wrapped up the gold medal with a race to spare, which we saw in the Nacra World Championships last week in Le Grand Mot near Montpellier, which is where I was just before this one, and we'll come on to that in a moment.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Well, I mean, that's the format that Sail GP have been pushing for quite some time now. Winner takes all, right at the end. So who are the players? Who are the key people? I mean, well, actually, 2 questions. Who are the key players the names that we should be looking out for? And secondly, where have these people come from? Have they come from the kiteboarding, the kite surfing community, or have they moved across from other areas of sailing, from windsurfing or from wherever? Where have they come from?
Well, a bit of everything. And Matt, I want to try and honour our 5 minutes as close as possible as we can. So I'm not going to go too far into the detail, but they have come from a range. So just to give you an example, Ellie Aldridge, who is the top female from Great Britain, very high chance of winning a medal, come from conventional sailing, 29ers and 49er FXs before moving into kite. And then Max Mader, who's very much the nailed-on gold medal favourite in the men, 17-year-old from Singapore. He's just kited all his life, well, pretty much since he was 6 or 7 years old. So we see a variety of backgrounds, and we see the advantages of each of those. But I'm not going to go into too much more detail. We'll put some links with a little bit more explanation of that and who the runners and riders are, etc.
You're trying to point to it being me that's extending the time on this clock, aren't you? And it's probably very justified, to be honest, but it's just a really interesting side of the sport. Now, quickly tell me.
But we are what we're doing. Remember, Matt, we're teasing to other great material that you in particular produce on PlanetSail. So
True. Okay,
let's try and stick.
now you said about the Nacras last week, wasn't it? That's where you were last week, and you said to me the other day that you were just recently that you'd spoke to someone quite interesting there, Ruggero Tita, who I know. Ruggero Tita, well, I don't really know him, but I've met him because he's now part of the America's Cup scene.
Yeah, so it was the 49er and 49er FX European Championships, and actually we saw Uruguay just beat Great Britain in the men, and we saw Belgium win the women in the FX skiff. But in the foiling catamaran, the Nacra 17, it was Ruggero Tita and Caterina Banti who won their fourth world title, their third in a row, and they have always been faster in the foiling conditions, but it was a predominantly light wind week, and somehow they've managed to make the low riding version of the Nacra in sub 6 or 7 knots also very quick as well. So they got no weak spots. And then Tita, if he manages to win his Olympic gold medal or whatever he manages to achieve at the games in Marseille, just less than 2 weeks later will be part of Luna Rossa Prada Pirelli's team for the Italian America's Cup Challenge. So he's got no time whatsoever to cut ribbons of supermarkets and whatever else a gold medalist does back in Italy. He's straight across to Barcelona, and he's got to get his helmet on and get his head down and into the cockpit of that AC-75.
Yeah, well, he from those who followed some of the AC stuff before, him and Marco Gridoni sailed the AC-40 in Jeddah and were unbelievably quick and certainly turned a lot of heads. Interesting you mentioned Luna Rossa because I, as you will imagine, have been looking at America's Cup this week again. Serial addiction. What's interesting is that first of all, the Kiwis are packed up and they're shipping their boat up to Barcelona. So for the time being, for about a month, they're going to be sort of there's not much going on with them as far as we're aware. Certainly not on the big boat. Luna Rossa have also packed up because they've packed up and finished their training at their base in Cagliari in Sardinia. That's been their home for some time, and they've now put their boat on a ship and they're going to Barcelona, not so far away, obviously. But I was just looking down the list of the days that the teams have achieved on the water in the AC-75 so far. And interestingly, Luna Rossa are right up there with 13 days they achieved in their 75. But Alinghi, they're the ones who are right out in front with days on the water in their 75. They've done 17. Now, not all of them were sailing. Some of those days were tow tests and the rest of it, but nonetheless they've had the boat out there. Ineos Britannia, they've currently clocked up 10 days, and American Magic are on day 5. They've been the last to launch so far, so maybe that's not surprising they haven't clocked up quite so many days. And the French Orient Express racing team have yet to do any days in the 75 because they haven't actually put theirs in the water yet. But what's been interesting about watching them on these days is that we've all got a bit sort of well, those of us nerdy cup spotters got a bit juicy and excited about the hull shapes and the foils and everything else, which is all, of course, valid. But as plenty of people will be quick to point out, the hulls aren't in the water very much. So maybe they don't count so much. And we're starting, the focus now of my attention and other people's attention is what can they actually do? So it's not so much the shape of the hulls, but what can they achieve? And what really stands out already, and it's very, very early days, but what's already apparent is that all of these boats can lift up onto their foils in 6 knots of breeze. And that is not something that was the case back down in Auckland. Some could, some couldn't, but it was a real struggle. But they can all get up there and they've got more power. The reason is simple. They've got more, I say simple. They know how to do it is one thing, but the boats are a ton lighter. They're more powerful and the foils are far more sophisticated. But it bodes well for what is going to be a light airs venue coming ahead.
That's super critical, isn't it? I actually really enjoy those will they, won't they kind of foiling matches that we've seen in Auckland and also in Villanova for the AC40s last September. So I actually quite like that. But yeah, I mean, low end foiling takeoff speed, that's a critical part of their game, and in any form of foiling, the kiteboards included as well. So yeah, it's great to hear that they're able to achieve that at 6 knots. Amazing. And
Yeah.
sorry.
Well, it's also staggering watching them. I'm just running a little piece which we're going to put out later on in a few days' time, but basically a little mini documentary on Alinghi and how they've been playing catch up, and because they weren't in the last cup, so they were one of the two teams that really got a big mountain to climb if they want to stand any chance. And it's very interesting looking at the footage of them 18 months ago when they got their AC-75, the first one, which was the old Kiwi boat. Look at them sailing that after 10 or 20 days, and they're splashing around all over the place. By their own admission, they were still struggling to learn how to sail the boat, but they were crashing into waves and the rest of it and really having quite a tough time. You watch them sail the brand new boat now, 5 days in, no problem, dry laps all over the place. It's chalk and cheese now. The knowledge and the rate at which teams have now learned is phenomenal.
Yeah. I'm going to have to run soon, Matt, because I've got a skipper's briefing to get to. But I know that you have also been tracking the offshore scene. So update me with your conversation with Sam Goodchild.
Yes, I had a very interesting chat with Sam yesterday, actually, because I've been watching the Transat CIC, which is the old Offshore, which is a single-handed transatlantic race. And the reason I was looking at that so closely is that this is one of the big events before the start of the Vendée Globe. So the Amoca 60s were in it. And we had a bit of a shake-up at the front. Well, I say a shake-up, but we had Arkea Paprec, Johan Richom, Boris Herman in Militia, and Sam Davies in Initiative Kerr, who took the podium. And talking to Sam, he helped sort of unpick some of the reasons why that was the case. And one of the reasons was that it was a pretty heavy-going race at times. But these 3 boats are the 3 examples of new boats that have been optimized more towards heavier airs and, as he described it, more comfort. I think that's a relative term because they all wore, you look at they all wore noise cancelling headphones for the first 6 or 7 days going across the Atlantic. It is quite bizarre, but that's been really interesting. And there's going to be a lot more focus paid to this class. That was an interesting race. Again, we're going to be putting another feature out, so I won't go into it now, but we are in the middle of putting together a little mini documentary on why that mattered, based largely on Sam's excellent commentary, Sam Goodchild. And then there's another race back from New York to Les Sables d'Olonne, which starts at the end of this month. And we're going to be watching that as well, because there'll be some more of the top players in there as well. So lots to watch inshore and offshore.
All right, Matt, I'm looking forward to seeing that content. I'm going to catch up with you next week from Turkey. So I'll update you from there. Have a great rest of the week, and I will see you next week. See you then.
All right. Lovely job. See you later.